The potential Labour leader plans to take Britain back to the 70s, and the left continue to dominate the mainstream media. Hello everyone and welcome to another show. Today we're talking about Rebecca Long-Bailey, one of the top candidates to become the next Labour leader. Now obviously she's up against Keir Starmer, Lisa Nandy and Emily Thornberry, each one of them absolutely mental. But in this video we're going to talk about Long-Bailey because she's made some new pledges. So she's in the name of helping the working classes. Obviously she's more of a hardcore Marxist who happens to be a champagne socialist, completely out of touch with reality. People like her believe that ordinary people and working classes are stupid and they can't run their own lives, so we have to get the government to run their lives. So she has introduced a number of pledges and policies that will do the exact same thing. Firstly, she has pledged to back all strikes, no questions asked, if she becomes a Labour leader. She was speaking in Sheffield on Friday and she said that the party's route to power was rebuilding the trade union movement, and she said that she won't return to condemning striking teachers or firefighters. Now the biggest problem with this argument is that there's a difference between trade unions and trade union leaders and management and the ordinary workers who happen to be members. The same thing happened back in the 70s and 80s when the union bosses and union barons were forcing their members to strike, and the certain members, a lot of the workers just wanted to go to work and they were forced to go on strike. They literally went and harassed their families and went and chase them to their houses. It was absolutely crazy, and they wanted to do the same thing. Not every worker who happens to be a member of a union wants to refuse to go to work all the time. So that's one issue. The union barons and the trade union management are not the same thing as the ordinary working people. These are the people who make a lot of money. They are very rich, they're very powerful. That's why we call them union barons, and they are completely out of touch with reality. They just because they call themselves trade union doesn't mean they are linked to the ordinary working man and woman. Now that's one problem. She also wants to do something else because again, the working people are stupid. They can't run their own lives. So she needs to help them make decisions for themselves. This is another policy that she's pledging to ban emails outside working hours to end this 24/7 culture. Now, what is this 24/7 culture that we have? Because depending on the industry or sector, yes, certain jobs require a lot of people to be on standby and on alert all the time. But 24/7 culture, okay. This is the same thing that's similar to what Jeremy Corbyn proposed during the election, the whole 4-day week, working week. But what this will do in reality is actually it will damage the ordinary working people. Yeah, because the people who will be damaged are the employees. There are certain jobs and professions and certain employees who just want to work harder. They have to be on alert, not all the time, but just happens to be an email at 11 p.m, 10 p.m. They need to kind of respond to it. It's just called good customer service, depending on especially if they work with different countries, with different time zones. So that's one problem. Why is it the job of the government to parent? Why is it the job of the government to get involved with a voluntary exchange between an employee and an employer? And so this is absolutely mental. Now, the other thing she wants to do is she wants to nationalize everything that moves and breathes. So she's done a campaign video advocating for not only nationalizing the railways, which for some reason in the UK there's some appetite for it, because I've always said in the Western Europe, naturally speaking, there's a bit of socialism inside many of the citizens. So in this video we're going to destroy all the myths. I'm going to give you the facts about nationalization of trains. So let's watch the clip and get into it.
Who owns Britain? If you are one of the millions of people who get a train every day, there is a good chance you'll be travelling on a government-run train, just not a British one. Companies that are majority owned by the French, German, Dutch and Italian governments have leases on many of our lines.
Well, that's absolutely crazy. So firstly, there is she thinks that it's all about privatization versus nationalization in terms of for-profit and non-for-profit. It's not that. It depends on the culture. Certain countries, certain cultures, employees who work for the state sector, public sector, they were raised to be passionate and have public duty. They are more dedicated. Whereas in the West, in America, in the UK, it's the exact opposite. People who work for the public sector, they don't really care. They just go to work and go back home. But if they work for a private enterprise, they are more motivated and more passionate to actually work harder. Now, again, it's nothing to do with the actual ownership, because it's the everyday employees and the management and the structure that helps run these companies. Now, doesn't matter who actually owns them, the same structure will go ahead. We are going to talk about the problems that we have in the UK when it comes to trains. But don't forget that railways in the United Kingdom have always been nationalised, well, at least for the last few decades. They're still nationalised. Network Rail, the infrastructure, is still nationalised. Yes, trains are now, because of franchises, they're more privatised, but the railways, generally speaking, are nationalised. So I don't know what you want to do with them. Let's continue watching this, and then we'll get into the facts of nationalisation.
And it's not just our trains. Under privatisation, we have water companies run by the Canadian government and energy companies run by the French government.
Yeah, see, that's the problem. Some people say, well, we have some appetite when it comes to nationalising the railways because it's a monopoly. Yeah, but what about the energy companies and utilities? She also wants to do the same thing with them. This is the same Labour Party that when they got into power in '97, we had dozens of big and small energy companies out there, and now it's been reduced to like six massive monopolies because the government got involved with the sector and intervene in the market. The same thing will happen if they elect Rebecca Long Bailey as she becomes Prime Minister. Now, the next clip is absolutely crazy.
The case against public ownership is collapsing. We shouldn't have to pay twice, first through taxpayer subsidies and then through rail fares or energy bills. We shouldn't have to pay extra.
Now, let me get this right, because unless she didn't mean what she said, why do we have to pay twice? If we're already paying with our tax money, then why do we have to pay for the train fares? So I'm guessing she wants to do it like the NHS, where it has to be free at the point of use. It's mental. How on earth are you going to fund it? So without any train fares, just taxpayers' money, you're going to get the plumbers and the ordinary people out there who wouldn't even use the trains to fund the trains for the bankers who have to go to the city. It's crazy. And then watch the rest.
And we should be able to have a say in ensuring all of our infrastructure is run by us and for us.
So that's the biggest myth about public ownership or nationalisation. These hardcore Marxists go out there and say, well, if we nationalise it, we'll give it back to the people. What people? Which people are going to be controlling these sectors? It's the government. You're giving it to the government, not the people. What you're doing is you're stealing people's money, their tax money, to fund something that will be controlled by the state. The ordinary people out there have no say, absolutely whatsoever, over how these industries will be run if they're nationalised. You're just stealing their money to fund something that they have no control over. Now, we're going to talk about the facts about privatisation or nationalisation when it comes to trains. A lot of people say, look at Germany. Look how well Germany's doing. And they completely ignore the reality about that, and also the alternative, which is private enterprise. Yes, what's happening with the Deutsche Bahn is that they are now becoming a joke. Germans have now turned on Deutsche Bahn. Cancelled trains and lengthy delays have turned a once trusted railway system into a source of national shame. Yeah, because of these delays and cancellations and cracked bridges, everything's become more outdated. The DB is now becoming the butt of jokes. With all the complaints that's been happening, once the envy of much of the rest of the world is now a humiliation when it comes to this country, because overall, long-term nationalisation doesn't work. Eventually, you're going to run out of people's money. Now, on the other hand, let's look at Japan, because in Japan, when they privatized JR East actually, and its regional siblings, it was regarded as a triumph. The bulk of Japan's ultra-reliable railway network operates without a single yen of public subsidy. Pricing is straightforward, and apart from consumption tax hikes, JR East has never raised fares once in 31 years as a private operator. Of course, we regard the privatization of JR as a success. Obviously, this is like the perfect example of how Japan realized the best way to run railways, and it's just by using the best case studies from around the world. Is private ownership really a problem with Britain's railways? Because when you look at when the trains and actual trains were nationalised in this country, in the UK, back in the 70s and before that, it was a bit of a mess. And I don't know why people want to go back to that. Now, in the UK, we have problems because it's a bit of a mixed system. The trains are privatised, but the system, the railways are nationalised. So there's a bit of a mess. A lot of the delays happen because of bad signalling, thanks to the Network Rail, which is the nationalised parts of the railways, and the trains get the blame for it, obviously. Some of the train operators are absolutely terrible, and look at Northern Rail, what happened there. What you do instead is to just take it away from them, expand the franchises, create more competition on those for other companies to bid and to take over. That's how you do it. Now, in other news, we were talking about the mainstream media over the last few days. The way they have been operating recently is becoming slightly ridiculous. And on ITV's GMB, we had Iain Dale, one technically right-winger, and two really crazy left-wingers on the panel. Don't know why. Why it had to be 2 against 1. And up to a point where they have this tactic where when they lose an argument, they just start shouting and talking over you, so that you won't really have any time to say what you want to say. So what did Iain Dale do? He walked out.
Utter rubbish, if I may say so. It's nothing to do with cuts. This is to do with people doing the sensible thing and reporting something. You don't have to have thousands of pounds to be able to be sensible.
No, you have to have a basic amount of money to be able to actually respond.
But he went on his own. Now, he went on his own, presumably, because there wasn't somebody who could accompany him at all times because there wasn't the resources. To just sweep that away without any facts and just say, oh, it's not about resources,
he wasn't giving
facts,
ridiculous.
There's plenty of facts. You know,
do you want the data on the lack of resources?
The Children's Commissioner for this country has spoken frequently about the parlous state of children's social care.
So you suggesting
the expert that's been appointed to analyse this issue.
Okay, I won't speak.
Iain, no, come on, we'd like you to.
Okay, right, that's it.
No, we'd like you to.
Come on in. No, Iain, don't go.
We'd like you to speak.
Wow.
Well,
wow, what a fit of pique. What a grown-up
sorry.
I
think
he's a West Ham fan.
And you know platform yourself.
And rightly so, because there will come a time when you know that you can't actually deal with these people properly, and so you have a choice: either stand up on national live TV and shout at them, which is kind of crazy, or you could just walk out. And that's the right thing that Iain Dale did in that situation. It's not the first time that has happened. We had it recently when Toby Young in the middle, sitting there in between, being sandwiched between two crazies. Again, they were talking about the empire and the honours, and it always happens. Now, the problem with the ITV, the GMB, like in this occasion, Piers Morgan was there, but with Iain Dale, the two presenters, now Ben Shepherd, a great guy, and you know, Kate, they're good presenters generally speaking, but they were terrible in that morning because they couldn't manage the actual debate. They allowed the two crazy lefties to dominate the whole argument. It's the job of the host to bring down the tone, to give a chance, more time to the opposition, to actually the opposite side to say what they want to say as well. So it's actually also their fault, but it's because when Piers Morgan isn't there, the structure is kind of slightly different, so the ITV also needs to take some responsibility. But we are going to be exposing the left and the mainstream media, and at any opportunity, if they do something crazy, we'll always bring it to you to raise awareness. But if you enjoy the content, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and click on the bell next to it. We have a daily show at 5:45 PM. I'm Tousi, and I'll see you guys tomorrow with a new video.